What is the most embarrassing reason that you have had to go to the hospital? I cut my face open on water. Even the lifeguards don't know how. I was the only one in the pool and they were both watching me. While 8 months pregnant, I performed oral sex on my significant other. He held my head down while he came, and I ended up gagging and throwing up on his D. At this moment, lots and lots of liquids began shooting from my privates. I ran to the bathroom, leaving a giant mess behind me on the bed, down the hall, and all over the tile floor. I was absolutely convinced that my water had broken early. After the two of us got tidied up, we went to the hospital's birthing center. While doing intake, a middle-aged nurse asked what I had been doing when I thought my water had broke. Choking. On what? A D. And I assume this gentleman was there to witness this event? She asked, trying so hard not to laugh. Later it was explained to me that I squirted. TD. LR. I choked on a D. Came buckets. And thought my water had broke while 8 months pregnant. One time, I went to the hospital because I thought something was going on with my appendix. Turned out I was just really constipated. You know how when you were in grade school, your teacher would tell you to keep all 4 chair legs on the floor and not tilt back because some dippet kid fell over and cracked their head like 15 years ago? I'm the dippet kid that fell over in the chair. Had to go to the ER and get stitches in my head. It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, except I managed to do it on 2 separate occasions. Edit, because making minor grammatical errors when you're typing quickly upsets people. I went to a fraternity formal as my friend's date at a really nice restaurant and I choked on a piece of prime rib. Couldn't talk or breathe kind of choke. In the midst of chaos and people yelling and trying to remember how to do the Heimlich, the prime rib slid down my throat, opening up the airway but still blocking my entire esophagus. I had tried drinking water which only pulled up on top of the giant piece of meat in my throat. There are sexual innuendos everywhere. I am very aware. I proceeded to throw up all the water on my plate. For the next 16 hours nothing could stay down because I would swallow. It would hit the blockage, and then come right back up. Finally I went to the ER because I was getting super dehydrated. After numerous attempts to try and dissolve the meat in my throat with nasty tasting Alka-Seltzer type stuff, they had to put me under to do an endoscopy and scoop it out. I barely knew anyone at that formal but I made a lasting impression. To this day people will tell me to take small bites and chew my steak. TL. DR prime rib surgically removed from my throat after ruining a fraternity formal. Drank a potion my cousin and I made when I was 10. It was basically a mixture of everything under the kitchen sink. Tongue turned purple. Had to drink ipecac syrup. Good times. In the 7th grade, I was upset at RuneScape and kicked my wall. I ended up breaking my toe. When I was about 8, I was crouching under a small tree and stood up and a branch hit my head when it was sticking down. I thought, for some reason, I had no skull and that it stabbed me through my brain, and I assumed I was dying. I had a syncope episode and I passed out. I was taken to the ER, and they found the branch had just lightly scratched my head. I put a bead in my nose and it didn't come out. Woke up after a night of drinking with a tingly sensation in my left arm. I thought I just slept on it funny so I told my GF and she started wondering if I was having a heart attack. She got me all paranoid and it wasn't going away so off to the emergency room I go. Turns out I had something called Saturday night palsy. Basically my GF slept all snuggled up on my shoulder and cut off all the circulation to my left arm. I was too intoxicated to notice and wake up so I probably slept like that for 8 hours. It took about 3 days for the feeling to fully return to my arm. Every time my GF tries to sleep like that I tell her to stop or she'll give me the palsy again. When I was 12, I accidentally sat on one of my testicles and lodged it up in my body. Turns out my testicles got twisted up and had to have surgery to put them back in place. Lied to all of my friends about what happened when I got back to school. I got my D stuck in my life-size Sonic the Hedgehog figurine. That was hard to explain to the doctors. I fell on my head while doing yoga and concussed myself. Then, a month or 2 later, while showing friends how it happened, I fell again and had to go back to aunt. A nurse remembered me. I scratched my balls so hard it got wounded and then infected. Could only walk like a crab, with legs wide open, for 2 weeks. Had to go to the hospital that way. I am a pretty excitable person and I tend to get really into music. So one day, my 22-year-old male self was getting ready for work and listening to an awesome song on my new sound system in my apartment living room. I was pretty absent-minded and I had left an empty glass of water on the floor instead of the coffee table. I was buttoning up my shirt, dancing to the music, and I decided to say yeah, as I jumped over the back of the couch, landing on the glass, shattering it into pieces, many of which went into my foot. Dr. So what happened? I jumped over my couch and landed barefoot onto a glass cup. Avoid eye contact. Didn't happen to me, but my sister's friend, we'll call him Steve. Steve broke his arm. When she asked him how it happened, he said that he normally told people that it was from something simple like falling off a ladder or slipping on a puddle. Steve decided to elaborate and detail to my sister what really happened. Steve lived in a fraternity house and shared a room with 4 of his brothers. One night, after a party, Steve drunkenly passed out on his bed only to be awoken by his roommate a few hours later who was getting frisky with his girlfriend. Steve didn't want to interrupt the passionate drunken lovemaking that was happening on the bunk above him. He waited for the 2 lovers to get back at it for him to make his sneaky escape. When the 2 lovebirds got back at it, he decided to stick it in her booty hole. In the moments prior to Steve attempting to flee, the roommate ruptured, not entirely sure as to what the exact term was, his partner's sphincter. This caused the girl to it all over the bed and floor next to the bed uncontrollably. Steve had said that it was something like 30 seconds of constant it flow from her booty hole. After screaming, the roommate got queasy from the it all over his bed, the floor, and himself. So he vomited all over the floor aside the bed. As Steve couldn't bear to witness this nightmare of an evening, he jumped out of bed and sprinted to the door. He only made it 1 step as he slipped in the it and vomit, and broke his arm. TLDR. Steve slipped on a pile of his roommates and roommate's girlfriend's it and vomit and broke his arm. When I was 7, I went to the hospital 3 times in one day. First, I sat on a rusty nail. After getting a stitch in my ass cheek, my mom sent me outside to look for the exposed nail. I found it by stepping on it, which popped the nail off of my big toe. Finally, after my dad got home and my parents were good and drunk, he handed me a hammer and told me bend the nail back into the board. Sandbox frame falling apart. On the first swing I hit myself in the back of the head with the teeth, sending me back for a couple more stitches. Not too long after DIFES put me into a foster home. 2 years ago, my girlfriend got an exercise ball for Christmas. After New Year's, we got home, we spent the holidays with our families, and one evening I tested the exercise ball. Well, it's a fun, squishy thing that proved me that my core really needs some workout. Well, the next day, I got tremendous chest pain. I thought I was going to die. It hurt really bad and I couldn't find anything that could help it. I was barely able to breathe, as the slightest change of displacement in my lungs hurt like a mofo. I called ER and told the symptoms, and they told me to come there. It was a Saturday evening, about 7 PM. My girlfriend got behind the wheel and we left to the hospital. After driving for a minute or so, the pain ended as suddenly as it had started. I was a bit confused, but decided to go and get it checked anyway. So, after spending about 5 hours waiting, I got checked. They found nothing. I got home, a bit worried. Well, on Sunday morning, I decided to try out the exercise ball again, you know, to get my abs going. Right after doing the abs stuff, I got similar chest pain, although it wasn't as painful. I decided to stretch it away, and lo and behold, it worked. My core had such weak muscles that the slightest exercise caused them to lock up and cause me that pain. Nowadays, my core is in a lot better shape, and whenever I get similar pain, I know how to handle it. A June beetle got stuck in my ear. One day I drank 5 liters of Coca-Cola in 2 or 3 hours, while playing video game. Oh god, the pain. I cannot describe the pain, but it hurt so much. Spent the night at the hospital. Don't do this. Don't ever ducking do this. My older sister was trying to convince me to jump in a pool with her. I was scared of swimming and it was the deep end. I ended up jumping in, changing my mind halfway through and turning around. I split my chin open really badly on the concrete and had to go to the emergency room for stitches. My sisters never let me forget that incident, unfortunately. On the bright side, I'm a pretty good swimmer now. Since I'm very skinny and not fit at all, I was trying to increase my cardio by swimming laps in a pool. The poop was chilly enough to make everyone else stop swimming, but I decided to keep doing laps. That night I had some intense chest pains. They went on for almost an hour before I decided that I should go to the hospital. The doctors ran tests and checked my pressure and all that stuff. Couldn't find out what was wrong, and my heart was perfectly fine. They decided I was possibly muscle spasms from straining myself in the cold pool. All that money wasted on my unfit body. Edit. Pool not poop. The damage has already been done. A piece of beef jerky got caught in my esophagus. It wouldn't go down and couldn't come up. Water couldn't get past it. It was a complete logjam. I had to get a scope and the doctor told me afterwards that just as he was nearing it, the methodica hightailed it into my stomach. When I was 5, I hated brown and green M&Ms. One day I decided, hey, I'm not eating these brown and green M&Ms anymore, so I'm going to put them up my nose to dispose of them. I'm a genius. However, my cunning plan failed and I was rushed to hospital. Parents came home to the sheriff at my house. One of my friends said I sounded strange on the phone and called the sheriff. Wound up at the hospital. CAT scans, MRIs, EKGs, Holter monitor, brainwave scans, blood tests, urine tests, spinal tap, whole 9 yards. Had amnesia for several months. They have no idea what happened to me. No evidence of serious trauma. Just 2 cuts on my forehead. This is embarrassing due to my stupidity. One summer I decided to completely shave my head before starting an outdoor construction job. This being the first time I had ever shaved my head. My scalp was totally white. I didn't bother putting on sunscreen. After working a whole day in 95+ degree sun, my scalp was horribly burned and painful to the touch. I didn't think it was that big of a deal until the next day when I woke up and the top of my head was completely swollen. Picture Squidward. I went to the hospital and wasn't able to work for a week. My boss thought I was full of it until he saw the pictures of my head. Sorry, they're on an old cell phone that I can't find. The weirdest part was over the course of a week the fluid that built up under my scalp slowly made its way down my face. Every day I woke up I looked like a different monster. I opened a car door into my face. Blowing on a cheap plastic recorder as a child. Bit the mouthpiece. Mouthpiece broke. Swallowed mouthpiece. Never took to music after that. Work. I'm a stagehand. And was in the middle of tearing down a Disney on Ice show. So walking around was a dicey procedure. Had to be very careful not to slip and fall. Step, step, step. Nice and easy. Don't rush. Keep your weight centered. Step, stay, slip, wham. Down I go. My left foot deciding to betray me to the forces of gravity. But it wasn't the fall that sent me to the head of the line at the ER. No. What got me medical attention was the 6-foot-long truss bracket I had been carrying. When I fell, it hit the ice and bounced, as is the wont of a metallic object when it falls on a hard surface. It then drew a bead on the back of my head. Screaming headshot to itself as it augured in squarely on the back of my skull. I felt a sharp impact, and my vision went white for a moment. Heard a ringing in my head like I was at Notre Dame Cathedral and they were ringing in Vespers. I staggered to my feet as my co-workers came over to check on me. Blood was running down the back of my head and neck, and answering simple questions like who I was and where I was became surprisingly difficult. I got whisked away to the nearest hospital, where I was examined thoroughly, and an x-ray of my head taken. Yup, minor skull fracture, plus a decent cut to my scalp that required staples, and one whopper of a headache. I remember the whole incident quite clearly, but the next day is a complete blur. Apparently I went to school, took a test in my criminal law class, passed with a 98.2, and visited with my grandma for several hours. But according to my timeline, I went from Monday to Wednesday, completely skipping over Tuesday. TLDR. Got beat up by Tinkerbell. I had to take a friend to the hospital because she overdosed on energy drinks. She felt sick, had a headache, and was shaky. She insisted that she was in danger and had to go to the ER. I had to sit in the room with her while the doctor told her she was fine and that drinking more than one energy drink was stupid. Drinking 8 in less than 2 hours was incredibly stupid. Call me selfish, but that was embarrassing for me. I was visiting my friend in the middle of nowhere NC. I was eating my breakfast, eggs, toast, and bacon, when suddenly I realized I had swallowed my tongue ring. At first I didn't think much of it, but soon enough my brain had visions of it poking my guts and having poop leak in my innards. So, I do what any red-blooded American would do in that situation. I called poison control. She laughed and told me to go to ER, which was super far away, got an x-ray and told it should pass fine on its own and to check my poop. Problem is, no one told me how to properly check my poop, so I used a wire coat hanger to dig around. Never found it. Went back to hospital for another x-ray and it was gone. Jumped over a hedge to show my friends I could. Turns out I couldn't. Dislocated shoulder. It was a weeknight. Near bedtime. I was in my comfiest clothes, which were basically pajamas that I wore around the house until I changed into even comfier pajamas for sleeping. I was also wearing my comfiest slippers, which were ultra fuzzy but also the floppy sort that are prone to sliding off your feet at inopportune moments. I'd gone downstairs to get some apple crisp, because duck hair apple crisp. It was the last bit, so I was super excited and it smelled delicious and I couldn't wait to eat it. So I went charging up the stairs, the way an excitable teenager will do. My ultra fuzzy slippy slippers slipped and caught on one of the steps, my foot still half in, and my apple crisp and I went flying. I ended up at the hospital with a sprained ankle because I fell up the stairs. The apple crisp had to be wiped off the wall. RIP apple crisp. Edit. This is now my top upvoted comment. Thanks, Reddit. Took LSD and thought I was having a heart attack. I fell on and busted one of my testicles when I was like 12. They had to do like a sonogram type deal on my balls. A guy I know told me that once his phone got stuck in his butt after using it as a vibrator and his roommate texted all his friends and told them to all text them since the phone that was stuck in him was on vibrate. He was in the air for around 2 hours waiting with hundreds of messages to him. I cut my pinky down to the bone opening a can of cat food. A 16-year-old ran into me while playing ultimate frisbee. In fairness, he gave me 3 torn ligaments, 2 fractures, a torn muscle and some torn cartilage. I drank the whole bottle of banana flavored medicine when I was 6. I regret nothing.